we're ready to go.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Anaheim Public Utilities Board. We will start out with our roll call vote. A roll call vote, sorry.
Vice Chair Seymour,
Here.
Board Member Abdul Rahman,
Here.
Board Member Baroldi,
Here.
Board Member Guyona,
Here.
Board Member Campos Kurtz, here. Chair Madrano,
Here.
Board Member Bala is absent. Let the record show that we have a quorum.
Thank you. So we have public comments. Members of the public can submit comments electronically for board consideration. So members of the public can provide in-person comments on any item under the board, or provide public comments on any agenda item. When recognized by the chairperson, state your name and address for the record. And when established by the board for speakers, it's 3 minutes per speaker. Did we receive any electronic comments by chance?
We did not.
No public comment? Seeing none, we will close the public comment section of the meeting and all the minutes. The February 24th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion made by Vice Chair Seymour. Can I get a second? Second made by Member Guyona. Roll call vote, please.
This is a roll call vote for item number 2. Vice Chair Seymour,
Aye.
Board Member Abdul Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Baroldi,
Aye.
Board Member Guyona,
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz, Chair Madrano.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have a presentation on utility success indicators.
Okay, yes, thank you. So this is our semi-annual report that we do for the board to give you a snapshot of how we're doing over the last 6 months. And so Andrew Nguyen will be introducing and presenting this item. Andrew?
Thank you, Duku, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of our board. My name is Andrew Nguyen. I'm the Utilities Budget Administrator. This evening, I'll provide an update on our latest edition of the Utility Success Indicators, or USI, for the reporting period July 1st through December 31st of 2020. Because we have 2 presentations tonight, and to keep you guys all awake, I'll do my best to be brief, only highlighting some of the key changes in this edition. To recap, the USI is a report we distribute every 6 months. It covers our performance in major areas such as electric and water reliability, customer satisfaction, financial competitiveness, etc. One of the metrics we use to gauge customer satisfaction is our utility call wait time. For the reporting period, our customers were on hold for an average of 3.5 minutes, which is 30 seconds longer than our goal. The chart, you can see that our utility call wait times trended higher for most of the period. In analyzing our data, we found that our call handle time, which is the amount of time our callers are on the line, was nearly a minute longer than the last reporting period. And this is primarily because our service reps are spending more time with customers who are requesting help with their bills. Naturally, these calls take longer to address, as our service reps may discuss payment plan options with them and offer payment assistance options to those who are eligible for it. As mentioned in the USI, through our credit relief program, we were able to provide approximately $1.7 million in assistance to over 190,000 customers during the reporting period. Also in the reporting period, we reported 6.8 main breaks per 100 miles of pipe. Even though we met our goal, you can see that we had a few months where the number of main breaks were high. Going through our data, we found quite a number of main breaks were caused by pipe stress due to nearby contractor work. Some pipes are more prone to stress from underground disturbances caused by soil erosion, ground settlement, and as I just mentioned, nearby excavation activities. We continue to monitor our pipes closely, prioritizing replacements based on a pipe's age, condition, as well as material.
Question? What is concerning is the trend line. We're pretty flat for quite a long time, and all of a sudden we're ramping up. Can you comment on that?
So I'm gonna ask Michael to comment on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. We noticed that trend too over the last, over the last year or so. And part of that is we've known to increase our investment into pipelines. And we've been doing that with the budget that we propose to you is increase the amount of, we're gonna invest in replacing our aging infrastructure. The other thing that we're doing too is we now have a new delivery method or tool that we can use to allow us to deliver projects quicker. And that's our design build master construction agreement that you guys approved last year also. So we think that between those two, that trend over the next couple of years will change. And we're going to see an improvement in that as we invest more into pipe replacement and we're able to turn over and do projects quicker.
So we don't expect this trend line to continue up. We rather expect to flatten and go down over the next 2 years.
Right. We also are shifting how we select which pipes to replace. So as we increase our investment into replacing our aging pipes that are below ground and we can't see them, we don't know where they're at. We now are starting an asset management approach to determining which pipes to replace. So there's a lot more factors in the age of pipe or whether a pipe nearby has broken. There's a lot of other criteria that goes into the decision of do we replace that. So asset management approach we think is also going to help with this, but also help with reducing the number of customers that are out of service when we have a main break.
Just one other thing I'd like to add is there's heavy construction going on State College with respect to a sewer replacement. And there's been a handful of main breaks because of that construction. So there could be additional construction still continuing on. And we've been trying to work with them because they're also doing some water main replacements for us at the same time. But that's been a very challenging project over the last 2 years?
2 years.
Over 2 years, and it's still continuing on.
So the next time that we review these numbers is when, 6 months from now?
6 months, correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to jump now to our financial metrics. In December, our water utility was downgraded by Fitch from AAA to AA+. Related to this matter is our debt service coverage for the water utility. We're projecting our coverage to be 1.4 for the current fiscal year versus our target of 2.0 or higher. Right now, we're seeing elevated water supply costs because we're importing more water versus pumping less costly groundwater. Our capital investment in groundwater treatment facilities, reimbursable through the Orange County Water District, will help us restore local groundwater as our primary water supply source. Once that happens, we expect to see water supply costs decrease, which will improve water's debt service coverage and other related financial metrics. Finally, we accomplished an important milestone recently by meeting the state's 33% RPS or Renewable Portfolio Standard requirement by 2020. Our integrated resources team works hard in managing our power supply and ensuring that we meet these statewide mandates. The next big milestone will be achieving a 60% RPS by 2030. One of the ways we're planning to get there is through our Desert Harvest 2 project, which is pictured here in this slide. That just went online last December. The solar project is located in Riverside County and provides Anaheim 36 megawatts of power, which can serve 17,000 homes. That concludes my updates on the US side for this reporting period, and I can answer any questions that the board might have.
Questions from members of the board? A question?
That concludes this item.
Okay. Well, just gonna ask a question. Oh. Maybe.
Here, when you talk about the debt service coverage, you put 1.4. What does that mean?
So debt service coverage is pretty much like a ratio. It's pretty much the money that you have available to cover the year's debt service, which includes the principal and interest for that year. And so right now, because we're seeing higher costs, there's less money available to cover our debt service. We still have that, but it's 1.4, and obviously we want it higher. And so once we get our costs down, or if we get our revenue up, our debt service coverage will improve. And so that's something that we expect once we start to implement our groundwater treatment facilities. We'll be able to import more groundwater, and that should lower our supply costs and improve our debt service coverage.
So it's basically if you look at your income statement, it's how much money you have left over after you pay your bills to pay your mortgage. So if your mortgage is $1,000, we have $1,400 left over. And the reason you wanted 2.0 is so that you have enough cash flow as a waterfall to pay for capital investment or put into reserves. So you're not just barely meeting your mortgage payment, right? Your bond payment. So that's why they want a higher level. So you have some cushion to pay your mortgage payment or your debt bond payment, and then you have more money left over to invest.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing none. Does this conclude this item?
Yes.
Great, then next item. Before we move on to the next item, number 4, I want to make everyone aware that I will not be participating in the discussion of the vote on this item, so I'll be leaving the room. As an employee of the Los Angeles North County Building and Construction Board Council, which represents 49 local units of district council, some of which may be involved in the construction project that's coming up. So I would ask Vice Chair Seymour to take over on this portion of the item. I will be stepping out. Somebody can get in when it's over, and I'll be back.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Now we'll move to item number 4, Mr. Lee.
Yes, we have a presentation. Michael, did you want to do this?
Yeah, there's a series of action items, but also we're going to have Craig present on this. This is related to the new emerging compounds, PFAS, that have worked their way into our groundwater system. And as a result, as I've explained over the last year, we have shut down a majority of our wells, and we've now switched over to buying more expensive imported water because those wells are offline. As we then planned, so we have been planning to build treatment to bring those wells back online. And so the action items today in the presentation will explain to you the process that we've gone through in bringing on a team to construct, design, and manage the first phase of this very exciting program to build treatment at our well sites, 4 of our well sites, to bring them back online quickly. And so with that, I'm Craig Parker. He's our water engineering manager and oversees all the planning and capital design for the city's water system. And he's been working on this project for over a year, for almost 2 years. And I'll have him present this first phase of this program.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Well, we're very excited to be at this phase of the project. It's been a lot of hard work, as Michael said. We've been tracking this for a number of years, and now we're to a point that we can initiate some action. So just to remind the board, this is an issue that's a national issue. It's not just an Orange County issue. It's not just an Anaheim issue. As you can see, it's throughout the United States, kind of heavy in the Northeast, and then in California as well. If you look to the right there, where does this stuff come from? It comes from Teflon pans. It comes from stain-resistant carpet. They used it for firefighting foams. It was introduced to the environment as early as the 1940s, and it's been going on since. They've stopped making it, but it's still in the environment. So now it's up to us to clean this up. So what's the impact to Anaheim? It's a pretty big impact. So in 2019, before this hit us, we were about 25% imported water and 75% groundwater. As Michael said, when this regulation hit, we had to shut off 14 of our 19 wells, and it flipped the water portfolio to about 25% groundwater and 75% imported water. So what does that mean to us? It's about $15 million a year. Now, of course, it's worth it because it's the safety of the public, but there is a cost impact to that. So what are we going to do about it? We have a 3-pronged strategy. Most importantly, the customer safety. As Michael mentioned, we shut off our wells immediately. Secondly, cost recovery. Last year, we brought an agreement to you from Orange County Water District. They're going to cover the majority of the capital cost to build these treatment plants. They're going to cover about 50% of the operations and maintenance costs as well. We're also in joint litigation with Orange County Water District. I can't say much more than that because Allison will get mad at me. But we are trying to go after the people that put this into the environment as well. And lastly, we want to restore the groundwater. We want to get these wells back online. So how do we do that? We have a 3-phase program. Why do we have 3 phases? Why don't we just have one big project? Well, some of these sites are kind of challenging. We've got limited land on some of these sites. So those sites that are more challenging for land, those are in the later phases. The one that we can do now, what we're going to be talking about tonight, those are the ones that we can hit now. But the phase B and C are those a little more challenging. We have a well that's on an SCE property, so we have to coordinate with them. We've got some on Parks Department sites and things like that. Everyone's cooperating. It just takes a little more time to work those things out. So what's become in front of you tonight is we want to recommend the award of the design build contract for phase A, but also in before you is the construction management for the entire program. So that's phase A, B, and C. So what are we building? I mean, everyone always talks about it's like a black box. This one isn't so bad. We're going to be building what we call cartridge filters that takes out the larger particles. Sometimes there's sand and stuff in wells. That'll take that out. Then the water goes through a vessel system. It's got media in there, so when the water comes in contact with that media, it takes out the PFAS. And then we put a little chlorine back in, and it goes back into the system. It sounds simple, but there's a lot of little pieces there. So what does phase A include? So we've got 4 sites. Again, these are the easiest sites for us to get. Our most important site is our Linda Vista site. It's up by Anaheim Lake. That's got 5 wells, and so that's a vital centralized place for us. So we're really lucky we're able to get that into phase A. And we have a well at Boysen Park. We have a well at Energy Field. And then we have a well at our La Palma site, which is near La Palma and West Street. So phase A, the Linda Vista site. I hope you can see the cursor here. This part of the site is existing. We've got a reservoir. We have some booster stations, chlorine station, and so on. All this stuff from this part down is new. So we're going to have to build these vessels that I talked about. And we've got cartridge filters here. We have to put in some new inline boosters to pump the water through the system because our wells can't pump it all through there. And we're going to have an operations building that's going to be for the entire facility. Most importantly, we want these to be top of the line, ease of operations, ease of maintenance, so we can maintain these facilities. And that's the reason you see all these access for trucks, access for staff, and so on, because these are going to be around for a while. At our La Palma facility, this is our existing facility. We have an existing well. We have an existing building. Here on sort of the east side, again, we have the tanks, cartridge filters. We had to upgrade our chlorine system there. We're going to have a new driveway onto La Palma, so we can again have total access. We get the trucks in there to get the resin into the vessels and so on. Aesthetically, we're going to be taking care of the neighbors as well. As you can see, we're going to have a block wall here to minimize the neighbors from being able to see the tanks. And then at Boysen Park, this is a really challenging site. In fact, if you've ever been to this park, you probably would never know that there's a well there. There's a baseball field here, and behind a fence is a small building here you can see that has all of our facilities in it. And so the most challenging part of that was, how do we get treatment for that? So we work with the Parks Department, we work with the tennis group here, and we found a good spot. So we can put our tanks here and our cartridge filters. We can screen it really well, and we can still have parking for the residents. It integrates real well. The Parks Department's been working with us really, really well. And so this has been a tough site, but we've been able to find a solution, at least on paper.
have a question.
Sure.
Yes, wait.
How was, I believe, that was, the last one was, in the VISTA. Where is the reservoir? You don't have, not that,
Yeah, this is the reservoir here. So if you happen to,
this one, yes, but the one with,
Poison.
yeah.
Poison. Why is there no tank on Boysen?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Why is there no tank at the Boysen facility?
Well, we don't have a reservoir there because the well pumps directly into the system.
It's just around.
Yeah. The reason we have a tank at Linda Vista because we have multiple wells coming in, goes into a tank so we can chlorinate it, and then we have a couple booster stations that pump it out.
This is only one well.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
This site has only one well, right?
That's correct, right. That's correct.
Any other questions? I have.
Sure.
Are there any concerns regarding security at this site? Because we have a lot of public going through this area. How are we going to deal with that?
So we have a lot of experience with that with this well here. So first of all, you screen it really well so they can't see it. And second of all, you typically have no climb fencing and things like that. In fact, if you go look at this well, even if you get really close and try to look inside, it's still hard to see anything. So we'll have something similar for these tanks. And so yes, you're right. You always have to worry about vandalism and things like that. But we have a lot of experience at this. If you look at any of our well sites, if they're very secure, they blend in with the community well. And most times, like I said, you can't even tell that it's a well, or you can't even tell if it's true.
Will there be any noise?
The only noise is at the existing well, but since that's inside a building, you can't even tell. With this new treatment, we have tanks and cartridge filters, so those don't tend to make any noise.
Thank you.
But there will be operations, so we have to go in there and change the resin occasionally. So there's going to be sometimes that there's going to be trucks coming through and stuff, but we're going to work that out.
Thank you.
In addition to the screening, there is going to be a hard fence or wall around the new facilities there. You can't see it from this angle. In addition to that, we will have cameras there that record and then are monitored at our Linane Treatment Plant Operations Center that's staffed 24 hours a day.
Very good.
Okay, so Energy Field, this is an interesting site. Again, we have fit in a well on this block here. And because we don't have room on the well site, we do have an available piece of land here that we can put our treatment. So we'll be building a pipeline from the well to here, and then a pipeline back, and then it goes back into the system. And so we'll be coordinating with Joseph and electrical to go through the substation. And he's been great to work with. So as far as phase A, we've selected design build as the delivery method. Why do we select design build? It saves a lot of time. If you usually do design bid build, you usually design it, you select a consultant first, then you go out to bid for construction. This is like a one-stop shop. Also, it works real well for just the integrity of the entire project. Everything flows better. So it's a two-step process that we go through. Anaheim Municipal Code 10.06. We have what we call a request for qualifications phase. And so that's RFQ. So we put an advertisement out, multiple contractors, design build teams submit. We look at those qualifications. In this case, we picked the top three. The top three submitted proposals that was as we call the RFT stage. Also, as part of this process, we did work in the community workforce agreement. So that's so we can use local hire and unions and so on to help build the project. So we issued an RFQ on August 18th. We selected the top three, and then they submitted proposals on November 2nd. So the question is, how do we pick who is best? It's really a best value approach. So we look at qualifications. We look at life cycle costs. So that's just not capital cost. That's operations and maintenance costs, sort of the life cost of the project. And we want to pick the lowest cost for the city over the duration of the project, not just the lowest capital cost. And then we look at schedule. Can they beat the schedule that we had? Their treatment process proposal. Again, I talk about operational resilience. We want something that's going to be good for the operators, going to be ease of operations that you can maintain and so on. Technical qualifications, of course, and then of course, the overall is the best value.
Questions? Yeah, when we talk about the RFP, request for proposal, and also there is RFP, invitation for biddings. Is RFP is also embedded in the invitation for bidding, or there's a separation between RFP and IFP?
The RFP is the second step. So we have what we put in the RFP is the contractual requirements, and we put the actual technical requirements of what we're looking for. So it's much more detailed than say the RFQ stage, which the RFQ is just picking qualifications. Have they done similar projects and so on. The RFP is where they give you a technical proposal, almost like a 30% design. They tell you exactly how they're going to lay things out, what kind of equipment they're going to use, and they give you a price proposal as well. So it's a more detailed approach than the first. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, but for the execution of the project itself, that include RFP or IFP, invitation for biddings. Who's going to have, because I know the RFP is just evaluations.
Well, no, because this is a design build, the RFP is the actual solicitation for the design and the construction.
Okay.
Well, normally you're absolutely right. You'd have an RFP for, say, the design consultant. They would do a design and you go out to construction bids. This is a combined project. This is a combined process.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so based on that process, we on the top three that were pre-qualified, we got the three proposals, and we picked CDM as the best firm to do this project. So why do we pick them? They have a lot of good ion exchange treatment plant experience. That's the process that we're going to use on this project. They have a lot of design build experience. They also had a lot of local teams, so not just a local office, but they had teams that are planted here in Southern California. They actually have an office in Rancho Cucamonga that does a lot of the instrumentation work. They construct their own panels and things like that, which is kind of rare. But they also give us the best value. They had one of the best technical firms, but they gave a great price as well. So combined, they were rated #1. So now we'll talk about construction management. That's the second contract I talked about, where this firm is going to be doing construction management for all three phases, where the design builder was just being awarded for phase A. So this is a more efficient way to do it rather than hiring a construction management firm for each phase. The continuity is much better. So what is the construction management firm going to do? They're going to look at the contract that we execute with the design builder, and they're going to make sure they do what they said. Whatever's in that contract, the construction management firm is going to be out there. Not only do they have, offices that watch the contract and things like that, they have inspectors in the field. So they're going to make sure that the owner is represented well in the field. So how do we select them? We have a City Council Policy 4.1. It's a process that the city's had for quite some time on the way that we select consultants, and we followed that. So we issued a request for proposals. This goes back to, this is just a proposal. It's not a construction, right? This is a consultant service. In December, we had a selection panel that looked at many factors: past performance, relevant experience, qualifications, of course. But one of the most important things for a project of this size is, do they have the capacity to provide the resources to implement the project for us? So, you might have some firms that are qualified, but they have 10 people. This is a project that's millions and millions of dollars. You need someone that's going to be out there for the eyes and ears for us and make sure everything is going smoothly. So that's one of the biggest factors. So who do we select? We selected MWH. Why did we select them? Again, it was a selection committee that went through the process. They've been through numerous treatment plants for construction management. But also, one of the big things they did, they're also design builders. So they've been on both sides. So they know the way a design builder thinks because they're design builders as well. And so they're going to know exactly what's going on when the design builder is proposing things to see if that's appropriate or not. And they have a lot of CWA experience, which is great since that's a big part of the project. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's some asking about, you allocate any budget for the 3 phases?
Yes, and then it'll be also reimbursed by Orange County Water District, right? So over time, so it's fully paid for. And then our plan is to use the line of credit as a buffer while we're waiting for reimbursement from Orange County Water District. So we're not using our own cash reserves will be the financing plan. So with the interest rate as low as it is on the line of credit, it's a very cheap way to finance, interim finance while we wait for Orange County Water District.
Yeah. Nice idea, listen. But estimation, how much you think the cost in general? I know they have to bid and everything, but just
Oh, the
estimate
pricing.
cost.
Can you include the pricing? It's in the staff report. So-
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the design build contract is for $56,894,500. The construction management contracts for $9,730,800. So combined, it's $66,625,300.
Just for comparison purposes, how do the other bids stack up from a dollar perspective? I know that's not the end all be all for design build, but just wondered what how they looked.
Yeah, we don't unfold the pricing in a public session, but the other bidders were significantly higher on their direct capital costs, which really drove their best value scoring down. And that was really the big decision on why this contractor, CDM, was selected and won.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As we now move forward to our recommendation, I want to point out that we have one resolution and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 motions. And Allison agrees that we can do all of those at one time. Does any board member want to pull any one of those out for a specific motion? Or can we do it all at one time?
I think it's okay for me to go all of them.
Everybody agree all at one time?
All at one time, like.
Victor, are you there?
Do we have to move the motion to do it all in one time, or is it good just to do it in a?
One motion.
Okay. Do we have to motion to do it all at once?
Do I hear you making that motion?
I'll move the motion to make all 5 at one vote.
Okay. Now, the next step will be,
Second,
I have a second on that. The next step will be to make a motion to approve all of these items. Do I have a motion?
I move the motion.
I have a motion by Rudy and Norma second. We'll do a roll call vote. Peggy?
This is a roll call vote for item number 4. Vice Chair Seymour,
Aye.
Board Member Abdul Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Baroldi,
Aye.
Board Member Guyona,
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz. Aye. The vote is 5 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent not present, and 1 recusal. Chairman Ernesto Madrano. Motion carries.
I'd like to just make a comment. This will be a significant positive for our water rates for our customers.
Yes.
Victor and I had the opportunity to look at one of the areas. We were both very impressed with the ability of our staff to look at it as the best solution. We have the location. It's an aggregating point. It's definitely the lowest way we can manage the cost on this particular item. So thank you, Michael, and your staff for putting all this together.
You're welcome.
Ernesto, the meeting is back to you.
Item number 4
Yes.
Clarification on the electric system reliability.
Okay, Janet?
Okay, yes, welcome back, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, board members. Included in your binders is the 2019 Electric Reliability Report. It provides an overview of APU's electric system performance over that year, and also a comparison to surrounding utilities for that same period of time. We present this report to the board annually, and we also post the report to the APU website so that the public can view how their local utility is performing in terms of reliability. You may be wondering why we are presenting 2019 numbers versus 2020. And we partner with a collective group of public utilities in the area to share performance data. And we use a collective joint consultant for the analysis. And the joint group decided to change that consultant this past year so that we could get more timely information, which is why we have 2019 information. We have selected this new consultant. They have collected all the data. We want to present to the board the 2019 data, but we will also then, by the end of this year, be presenting the 2020 information as well. So Joseph Way will present the highlights of the report. Joseph is our system planning, substation, and automation engineering manager, and his group is the one who produces the report. So Joseph, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I guess we're talking about 2019. Seems like that was a long time ago. And for sure, we were closer like this. So 2019 was a rough couple of years for California, predominantly weather and wildfire related. Climate change and extreme weather events are real, and they are having impact on electric reliability. We need to plan for it. Look what happened in Texas this year. So fortunately, Anaheim has high reliability, and we'll get into that shortly. So all utilities across nation keep track of these three metrics for their reliability performance annually. Just like baseball, whether you play in Major League or Little League, they have a consistent way of tracking player batting average. So you know which player had a good year. Utility business, we love acronyms, PFAS, SAFE. So SAFE measures frequency of power outages and the resilience of the electric system to external elements such as weather, foreign objects contacting the lines such as animals or metallic balloons. It also reflects whether electric system infrastructure is aging and experiencing equipment failure. Comparing Anaheim to nearby utilities, both public and privately owned, Anaheim customer would experience a power outage once every 2 years. The cities surrounding Anaheim, they would expect to have a power outage almost every year, or like five outages every 6 years. So that's the difference of those numbers. Last fall, we experienced a heat storm that resulted in 3 outages over a 3-day period, where we typically experience 15 outages of the entire month. As we share with the board in January, we are implementing an accelerated transformer replacement program to prioritize the equipment that led to those majority of those outages. So we're targeting 400 per year over the next 5 years. Next acronym, SAIDI. Actually, it's a performance it measures sustained power outages lasting more than 1 minute. So all these 3 indices exclude those momentary outages. So for customers in Anaheim, would experience a power outage lasting 42 minutes, which is below national average of the all public utilities first quartile. Next is Katie. Step measures how fast we restore power once the customer has experienced an outage. The lower the number, the better. Anaheim is in the top quartile for getting on site, making repairs. However, this measure is trending upwards slightly from last year. Undergrounding more power lines, they do improve our reliability. The frequencies do go down. But when there is an outage, it's a little harder to troubleshoot them, identify them, and locate them. So, we have invested in improved instruments for our crews to locate underground faults last year, and we're getting positive feedback from them. So in 2019, we had several outage incidents that involved vehicle hitting our pet mount equipment. And also we had a couple of incidents, animals actually got into a pet mount equipment. So those are kind of the major outage that was involved with underground equipment into the 2019. But as you can see the numbers here that our number is much better than those utilities shown here. When you have a low number like this, it's a bit hard to maintain or improve that number because a few incidents can drive that KD number to go up easily. So just like a baseball player, if you're hitting 400, if a couple of bad games, you could dip to 300 pretty easily. It's hard to go back to 400. So baseball talk. So these top 6 most common cause accounts for 72% of the 160 outage that occurred in 2019. The underground cable failure, 25% of all outages are attributed to the continued deterioration of the old direct bury cables. The cable that is in contact with the soil that was installed in the 70s. At that time, we didn't put conduit to protect the cable. That's not how we do things today. But for the past 5 years, direct bury cable failures are trending down slightly. I expect that trend to continue as we replace more of these cables. There is a direct bury cable replacement programs. We're at 72% completion at this point. Equipment failures, both overhead and underground combined, account for 20% of all outages that year. Metallic balloons continue to be high on the list. As surrounding area begins to reopen, we're expecting to see that to rise again as graduation approaches. We'll run our public service announcement on the local networks as a reminder. So we were expecting a sharp decline in 2020 because with all the canceled events with COVID, it turned out that was not the case. We had 18 outages due to metallic balloons in 2020. We'll continue to evaluate if our equipment replacement timeline is quick enough based on the trend line of these numbers, but overall, the total number of outages decreased slightly 2019 from the year before, even more so from 2017. The trend for 2020 is looking better as well, although we had a pretty tough summer. But overall, it was a good year in terms of reliability, year 2020. So these are the ongoing programs we have in place to address the most common outages: direct bury cable replacement, accelerated transformer replacement, substation upgrades that will give us additional flexibility to reroute power, and system automation will expand those to improve outage response time. We will be undergrounding power lines in high fire threat zones using FEMA grant. And also will increase in tree trimming. We've also invested in equipment for our crews to access infrastructure on private property so they can quickly respond to an outage with little inconvenience to residents. This pole and transformer hoist is only 3 feet wide. Pretty much they can go through most gates. And this device will be also very valuable for us when we start to continue to replace the aging transformers and poles in people's backyard. And we're in the final testing stage of this new mobile substation, which will be delivered within a couple of months. This mobile substation will replace our existing 60-year-old mobile transformer. The mobile substation is used when an existing transformer experiences an unplanned outage or an infrastructure upgrade made within a substation require us to de-energize the equipment so that we can work safely and no impacts to the service level. So in summary, Anaheim reliability remains high. We're in top quartile nationwide for outage frequency and duration. We have future challenges to consider with climate change resulting in more severe weather events and more stress on the regional grid impacting California customers. We have very little exposure to wildfire because with 98% of our system are already undergrounded in the high fire threat zone. We'll continue to make positive improvements with our aggressive capital programs. We'll continue to look for ways to speed up our restoration times. That concludes my presentation. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Vice Chair Seymour?
I don't really have a question. I have a comment. When I look at the reliability initiatives, now I look back at our trends and I look back at our actual performance. Always the question I have is, are we going fast enough on replacing underground cable? Are we going fast enough on transformers? And based upon our data of results, I would say yes.
Okay. Thank you.
It's always a challenge when you're trying to balance, rates and impacts to customers versus reliability. Both of them are such important priorities for us. And so Janet and Joseph do really a good job of trying to figure out how can we prioritize those dollars to have the most benefit. And as we talked about with the transformer replacement, you kind of have to have a holistic view of not just outage incidents, but age, condition, manufacturer, all those different things that they're going to start to look at. And hopefully we can address that. But the 2020 numbers will include, even though Joseph said they're pretty good, it still includes a very challenging summer that we had. So definitely we're going to be making improvements.
I think your strategy is working.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vice Chairman Seymour, that it's important to look at the trend lines. Because as Joseph said, you could have a bad year or we could have a great year. But the trend lines are really what I think you see that dictate, are we going fast enough? Are we doing enough? But we really do keep an eye on that.
Yeah. And if you pull back to actually when we had some very significant storms and weather, 2001, late 90s, I mean, we had really high numbers that dwarf what we're at right now. So really right now we're fine tuning our programs, but the big push came in the 2000s where we really started to focus on capital investments and really drive that number down. So one of these times we might want to bring that out again so we can see the longer term purview, because a lot of these things, the equipment that they install has 30-year life supposedly. So when you can kind of pull back and look over a 20, 30-year horizon, that's when you can see the significant change.
Thank you.
Any other questions for members of the board? Thank you. Next item, we have an action item, full agreement for online rebate processing and customer program solutions and services.
Yes, so I'm going to present this item. This one's near and dear to my heart. I actually started in this group in public utilities. And back then we had basically a bunch of spreadsheets to track all the programs. And here we are today, 20 years later, and we still have a bunch of spreadsheets tracking customer activities and things. And so finally, we made the decision. We were actually going to do this last year, but because of COVID and everything, we pulled back and said it's not a critical item. And so we're postponed it till now. But we're getting to the point where we really need a couple things. We need a data system that really looks at customer activity with rebates so that we're able to track and monitor and actually give the customers access to their rebate and efficiency improvements. So that's one element, which is a software system that's going to give us a lot more flexibility and operational capabilities. The second piece is if you've ever participated in a water rebate from Anaheim, you're actually going into a third party's website to get your low flow toilets and clothes washers and such. So this is actually the same firm that does it for Metropolitan Water District. And they ended up with the best, most high valued proposal for us. So it's really going to mirror on the electric side what we already do on the water side through the Metropolitan Water District. So we think there's a lot of synergy there, and it gives us the opportunity to have this firm, EGIA, conduct the rebate processing. They have their own customer service staff. So if there's a question about where's my rebate or how long, or if there's a question about the rebate, then they can actually do the cursory assistance on that. And if there's something more specific to Anaheim, then obviously our staff would get involved. But as we see, over the long term, that there's going to be a lot more activity with sustainable investments, things like weatherization, home utility checkups, we do feel like it's time for us to move and get a little bit more modern than tracking with spreadsheets. So that's what's before you tonight, is to help us to get to that next level in terms of offering services for our customers.
Any questions from members of the board?
But this one, I think, do you use a dashboard to track the whole activities in each?
So we do track dashboards for different parts of the organization. So things like reliability, the metrics that Janet just mentioned, we do. Andrew's group actually creates a dashboard for that. It's a lot more difficult with the things that we're talking about here, the numbers of customers. I literally have a summary spreadsheet, which is a culmination of other spreadsheets that helps me to track these things, and it's been difficult. So we'd like to move towards something where you can get a lot more streamlined information, dashboards, easier access to metrics, and also we have to report to the state. And so this will help us with those reporting tools as well.
It will be a real time so that you can see the data as of now. You see what I mean?
Yes, real-time data is very important as well. So that's a part of this package.
You save everything in a server. You have one server for the whole department, or?
This will be a cloud-based system. Yes, so it'll be a hosted system.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from members of the board?
I don't have a question or comment. I just applaud you for always looking ahead when you're dealing with systems and reports and so forth.
Thank you.
For the state, and see the opposite.
Yes. It's a challenge. We have a lot of old data, but at some point you have to start making improvements with your processes, your software systems. We're seeing a lot more hosted systems than before. A lot of private companies use those, and so we're feeling a little bit more comfortable with those. But still, cybersecurity and those things are still concerns of ours. But thank you very much for that comment.
Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to. Motion made by member Gaona. Get a second by member Campos Kurtz. We get a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote for item number 6. Vice Chair Seymour,
Aye.
Board Member Abdul-Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Barodu,
Aye.
Board Member Gaona,
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz,
Aye.
Chair Madrano.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, we have a presentation on safety services. for employee funding department.
Thank you. This afternoon, John Saggs, our Environmental Services Manager, will provide a presentation on the Department of Safety Services Program. With the pandemic, this has been a very demanding year, keeping up with the ever-changing requirements from both the state and federal government, as well as working with staff to address their concerns regarding COVID. Dawn will cover key elements of the program, performance, and outline our efforts for continuous improvement. Dawn?
Good evening. So as she said, my name is John Sanks, and I'm the Environmental Services and Safety Manager. And tonight I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what Safety Services does to protect our employees and the public at Anaheim Public Utilities. The clicker is not clicking. So first off, who is Safety Services? There's a group of 3 of us. There's myself, and then on the left-hand side of your screen, you see Carlos in the traffic vest and Arlene standing next to him. And the role that we serve for the utilities is, you can see on the screen there, we provide training for our staff, either by ourselves or we coordinate consultants for some special items like, electrical safety training and so on. We work closely with individuals who we call the field safety coordinators. Now, these are representatives that are selected from each of our divisions, such as electric and water, who are subject matter experts that we can go to in Safety Services to answer specific questions. They can give us in the details, what are their folks doing in the field that would require training? They can help participate in accident investigations, things like that, where we need somebody with the detailed knowledge to work with us. In Safety Services, we spend a lot of time conducting inspections, and this could be at our fixed facilities. It can be on job sites, looking for any hazards, looking at the tooling that's being used, any way to do a job a little bit more safely. We spend a lot of time looking at regulatory guidance. If you've ever read a Cal OSHA regulation, it is not entirely user-friendly. There's a lot of legalese, and it applies to a whole lot of industries that aren't necessarily water or electric utilities. So what we try to do in Safety Services is read through these documents, understand what it is it says, and really try to digest it down into some more bullet point type format that we can give to the boots on the ground so they can say, well, what does this rule actually mean for me? We would participate in any kind of an incident review, an accident investigation, or a near miss investigation, just so we can help understand what happened in this particular scenario. And most importantly, what are we going to do to prevent reoccurrence in the future? And we also are the liaison that coordinates with the city safety manager, who's in the Human Resources Department. And right now we have a closer than typical relationship because Carlos, our safety administrator, is actually on loan to the HR department, acting as the interim city safety manager, since there's currently a vacancy due to a retirement earlier this year. So let me walk you through some of the things that we've seen in 2020. So you can see on this chart that the predominant injury was related to sprains and strains. We want to focus on bringing that number down through 2021. And a few ways that we're going to do this are to, first off, increase safety visits to our job sites. We want to get out there and see, are the crews recognizing some of these hazards? We don't always have the luxury of working in, say, a factory type environment where we can remove hazards from the workplace. We have a pipe fitting crew who might be working out on Catella Boulevard and there's a median. Well, we can't just pick up that median of the curb and move it out of the way. We got to walk over this thing. So we want to make sure that these are getting recognized and that they're being talked about in the job pre-planning and such. We also want to make sure that all the tools that are available are out there for our crews. There's always advances on new ways to pick something up. There's new, transformer lifting dollies or lifting apparatus. And we just want to make sure that the crews have what they need to do their job as effectively as possible and not be relying on brute force to pick something up if they don't have to. Now, this new injury that kind of roared on the scene in 2020 is COVID-19. And just in all the time I've been doing environmental and safety, I've never had occupational illness become a focus of the discussion until this year. But here we are. So in 2020, we had 7 workplace COVID cases amongst Anaheim Public Utilities. And what I mean by a workplace case is that means that it's a COVID case that couldn't be attributed to another source. So there are other cases where perhaps an individual has a spouse, they were COVID positive, they're living together, they came down with COVID. Well, that's obviously not a workplace case. Other times the spread was asymptomatic and you can't really point to a specific individual and say, this is where COVID originated. So those are included here because we can't really differentiate otherwise. So like most of California, really, at least California, we saw a peak occurred in winter 2020. This was kind of in the Christmas timeframe as we moved back a tier in the Orange County opening status. So throughout the COVID pandemic, we've been taking a lot of steps to follow CDC guidance and Cal OSHA guidance, and I'll talk a little bit more about that.
I just have a question.
Yes.
The percentage is based on the number of the incidents or the number of the workers?
So this is the number of incidents. So based on the total number of what we'd call an OSHA reportable incident or injury, it's that percentage of that total breakdown.
Thank you.
So going back into the COVID response, so really first and foremost, we wanted to get on front of the masking requirements. That's why we're all here today being masked up. If we're working indoors, we're wearing a mask. If we're outdoors, within 6 feet of another person, would be wearing a mask. We made sure to make facility improvements where they made sense. So for instance, in cubicle areas for some of the workers who had to be in the office for whatever reason, we made efforts to raise the height of them to cut down on exposure. And there were barricades that were put up to isolate the public counters and the stickers on the floor, and a whole host of efforts that we made to try to maintain social distancing in our workplace. We took steps to try to separate and isolate our different field crews from one another. We wanted to make sure, say, that a water crew wouldn't be coming in contact with an electric crew. If they don't need to be working together, keep people apart, whether you're an essential worker or not. We also have the luxury of having primary and backup operation centers. So we also made sure that we separated between those two locations. So, we could concurrently have an individual at each one of those sites. That way we could, again, make sure that if one of those crew members, even on the same shift, wouldn't necessarily be impacting somebody else if they were to come down with COVID. We perform daily self-assessments at our workplace. That means every day when we come in, you go onto the web portal and you self-certify that you're feeling well. You don't have a temperature, no chills, anything like that. We have thermometers that are established at all of our different work sites. We have them on every utility floor within this building, and we have them at our field sites as well. And going back to COVID regulations, so in November, Cal OSHA released what they called the COVID-19 emergency standard, which kind of codified a lot of the guidance documents that have been going on already. But one aspect of this new regulation where it defined some parameters that had to happen if you had 3 cases of COVID that occurred within a 2-week period. And we did have that come up around Christmas time at our utilities yard. So a requirement of that new regulation was we had to conduct weekly testing of our employees who were at that job site until you go 2 weeks without a positive case. So we worked closely with the city human resources department and workers' comp to go and get clinics that were set up where we could get our workers to quickly. They were able to show their badge, get to the front of the COVID testing lines, get in, get out, get back to work, and then we're able to review the results. That period, and was pretty short-lived. It as of the end of January is when we were out of that program. We no longer were having COVID cases moving through the facility. So if we did come across a positive case, we wanted to jump on contact tracing. So here we were working really closely with the Anaheim Fire Department, who was in charge of infection control for the city. So we would be interviewing the employee. We would find out, well, did they come into the office? If they're working remote, there was no issue. But if they did come in, where were they, when were they, and who did they come in contact with? We really were focusing on who did they come in contact with for within 6 feet for 15 minutes throughout the day. This is the CDC guidance for contact tracing. And if we did identify any of these individuals, we would establish a quarantine for them to make sure they wouldn't come and expose anybody else if they were to come down with symptoms later. And so if they were on a quarantine, they were out for 10 days unless they were to show symptoms, then obviously it would be reassessed. Now, what helped keep these numbers down really was our quick response to begin telecommuting. Last year in March, we quickly jumped on to getting people out of the office, as many as possible. And we got about half of our employees out of the office very quickly. And that's really been instrumental to making sure we didn't have widespread COVID spread within the utility. So we had to make a lot of adaptations along the way. Obviously, here we are all spread out in this conference room. This is an adaptation we had to do to, again, make sure that we aren't exposing the public or yourselves to COVID. If we could do it online, we did it online. We do safety training online. We do our team meetings and so on. And it's been very successful. We've been able to make this work. Again, face coverings and social distancing have been the motto of 2020, and they're continuing through 2021. And I don't see that changing anytime immediately. We spent a lot of time looking at the processes and the jobs that are being done in the field and the office to make sure that there's no extra risk due to of COVID exposure. If we could split split it up. So, say one worker is traveling in one vehicle, another is in another, so they don't have to double up. That's an easy adaptation we can make, again, to cut down on the risk of exposure. And the way I see it is the sooner we all get vaccinated, the quicker this is all going to wrap up. And it's been pretty cool that here in the city, we've had the opportunity to volunteer at our Anaheim vaccine distribution sites at Disneyland or the Convention Center. I personally have worked a few shifts over at the Convention Center, working line control. We've also done some tasks, check-in and parking and so on, really wherever they need an extra set of help. So we're trying to do everything that we can to make sure the community as a whole is getting through COVID as well as us.
Question on the issue of vaccines. Knowing that public utility or utility workers are essential service workers, how are we helping getting our folks through the process to get the vaccine?
So it was pretty recently that the CDPH released updated guidance where they clarified that utility workers are categorized as emergency services workers. So we have sent postings out to all of our staff to distribute, letting them know that yes, you are an essential services worker. Yes, you're free for a vaccine right now. And we let them know this is how you can make an appointment. You can go through the Athena app, which is the county-run site, so you can go and get an appointment at one of the county and city-operated pods. Or they can go onto the website and it shows what other clinics are available. If you want to go to CVS, Walgreens, Kaiser, whoever, they should be letting you in to go and get a vaccination. So moving a little bit back to more traditional safety numbers, you can see our historical disabling injury rates. And a disabling injury rate is one where there was some time lost from being in the workplace. And since the 1980s, really for the most part, this graph has been trending downward pretty significantly. And I like to see how the public utilities average is generally under the citywide average. So despite the high hazards that we have here in utility work, we've been doing very well. Now, there's an uptick that you can see here in this last year. And what's interesting on that one is every one of those was related to a COVID-19 case. We didn't have any traditional occupational injury, disabling injuries this year, but they were COVID. And they get categorized this way because if they're on quarantine, they're not able to come in, and that in the OSHA's eyes would call that a disabling. Now, we don't have the citywide numbers just yet. They're still coming up with citywide calculations as a whole. But with my discussions with the city, I understand that those numbers have been following kind of a similar trend. It's not just utilities that had cases, but across the board, there were elevated COVID counts. So here's a little bit more of our safety performance through this last year. And where I like to focus on this pyramid is at the bottom with what we call close calls and near misses. And the importance here is that these are situations where an employee saw that there was a hazard, something occurred, but it didn't result in an injury. So say we go back to that Catella situation where there's a curb in the street. If you trip over that and you fall down, you don't get hurt, you don't get hit by a car, nothing really happens, but it was an unsafe situation where something bad could have happened if the situation was a little bit different. And what I like about these is this is a proactive response from our crews. And this means that they're taking the time to look and recognize, there was a potentially dangerous situation. I'm going to write this up. I'm going to bring this up with our safety group. I'm going to bring this up with my supervisor so we can talk about this and maybe learn, well, how do we avoid this altogether so it never develops into a full-blown incident? Our overall injury rates were fairly consistent between 2019 and 2020. Our total recordables were the same. We did see that the numbers of restricted duty increased slightly. Again, those seem to be driven by the sprains and strains that I had talked about earlier, which we're going to be focusing on through this year. Now, as a support role to the utility, we really want to make sure that we're being effective for our staff. So we run to solicit feedback from them. So one way we do this is through a safety survey. Of the roughly 300 employees we have in the utility, we got 104 in this last year, and we can come up with a few conclusions on this. First, we want to spend some extra time reaching out to the staff at our power plants and some of our remote facilities. And the reason is that through COVID, we've been trying to limit the number of visits to some of these remote sites that have operators stationed at them. We don't want to unexpectedly, bring COVID-19 into a place that doesn't already have it. But now that the COVID rates are declining throughout the county and more are getting vaccinated, we see this as an opportunity to get back out to some of these sites and have a little bit more face time. I also see that we're going to be participating more in some office safety committee meetings. And this is going to be as we get more of our teleworking staff returning into the office. They're going to have questions about what are the COVID procedures and what else has changed over the last year that we need to focus on. We're going to continue to hold our safety meetings just to make sure that COVID policies and just other safety in general is continuing to be reinforced. We had some training requests, and also I expect we're going to be having requests for more ergonomic checks. Again, as people come into the office, they haven't sat in a chair for a long time. We want to make sure that they're comfortable there. And again, we're going to continue looking for sprain and strain hazards along the way. So in a nutshell, what safety services is intended to do is make sure that we're continuing to improve our safety culture and that staff has what they need to, and the resources and the knowledge to do their jobs safely. We can focus on the regulatory aspect of things so they don't have to. We're the internal resource for them with the goal that everyone goes home safely. Now, this concludes the presentation portion of this topic. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from the board?
I just want to make one comment. When Janice and I sat down and started talking about our safety program, was this like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe? We started with the near misses and trying to identify how can we get more buy-in from staff in terms of safety culture. And I think that first year there was like 1 or 2, there's very few near misses. So the fact that now you're seeing 13, 16, double-digit numbers, it means that people are buying into the safety culture, which is if you identify something that could be a hazard, it might not be that individual could get hurt, but they're, the person working next to them could get hurt in the future. So like John was saying, it's good to identify those things and talk about them to address them to avoid incidents. So the safety group has come a long way in the last number of years.
And this measure only applied to the public utility workers, not contractors.
That's correct. The numbers that you see here are for the utility workers from office to field staff. We do have something that we're going to talk about for contractors with the next item, which is item number 8. So if you're ready to move on to that one, we can jump right into that.
Any questions on this item? Then we can move on to the next item, which is an action item. Approval of Department Order 514, the Accident Prevention Manual Safety Programs, and Department 515, Stop Work Policy and Contractor Safety.
Thank you again. John Sinks will also provide a presentation on the 2 new safety-related department orders for your approval. Department Order 514 on the Accident Prevention Manual and Department Order 515 on the South Shore and Contractor Safety Programs.
You get to hear me 2 items in a row. So yeah, so Department Order 514, this is a new department order that is a process for review and updates to a document that we call the Accident Prevention Manual. And what this is essentially, in my presentation, I talked about how we take a look at the Cal OSHA regulations and rules and best practices and such, and they're written in a lot of legalese and they're not user friendly. We try to take this information and digest it down into a guidebook that really spells out how is this applicable for utilities. What are the requirements for personal protective equipment? What are the requirements for entering an electrical vault? That kind of thing. And what this the department order does, it establishes a process that we review this document every year, incorporate any updates as necessary, and ensure that any of our staff have the appropriate training that are related to this document. And then we're also bringing one other new department order, and this is Department Order 515, which is our stop work policy and contractor safety. And as Dooku mentioned, this is our new, this relates somewhat to contractors, and this is a new department order that establishes a process to stop work if a observer sees that there is an unsafe condition. So it's supposed to be an empowering process where if someone is out there, we don't want them to second guess, are they able to shut down a job if it's not feeling right and it's not looking right and they see someone's going to get hurt? The answer is yes, you are allowed to stop this job. And this also applies to contractors. So whether you see it's a utility worker who's in an unsafe position or it's a contract crew in an unsafe position, anybody in Anaheim Public Utilities is able to speak up and say, hold on, let's wait a minute, let's talk about this and make sure that we're doing this safely. And what this department order also entails is it ensures that anytime this happens, it gets reported to the safety services group. The individual supervisors know that it's occurred. If a contractor is involved, we would let the contract project manager know as well. So that way we can also see, well, if there was a situation, we can discuss how do we keep this from occurring again in the future. Or it may come up that once you sit down and talk about it, maybe it was being done the correct way. We're able to stop and have a safety discussion and then say, okay, this is all okay. Let's continue the job.
So to help address the question that you had, AB, in terms of contractors, we made a lot of progress over the last number of years as well, where if we see that there's practices or things that they're not doing appropriately, we will bring their management team in and we will have a very hard discussion about some of the things that we don't like. And we've actually bolstered our contracts so that if they continue with this, we could actually drop them off our pre-qualified list. So the combination of having, that ability to have very frank conversations with them, with the contractual language that gives us that ability, and then we have these types of department orders that enable our employees, if they see an AT&T contractor working on a pole, and let's say there's something where they're getting close to our lines, our employees should stop that person and saying, you need to stop right now. You're getting way too close to the lines. So it's a way to make sure that our people feel like they can have a voice.
Like any small worker, sorry to say small, but low-level worker could stop work, right?
Yes.
Or it has to be determined by higher.
Safety is everybody's responsibility. There is no level to safety. So if somebody sees me doing something unsafe, then they need to say, you have to stop doing that because safety is everybody's responsibility.
Sometimes could be judgmental. Sometimes there's a gray area sometimes, how to make that.
Yes, and that's why the more these types of documents are being produced, it elicits conversation with our staff to say, well, what about this situation? Can I stop this situation? And that's where John and his team will say, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's figure out what works best. Give me an example of what you've seen, and then we could talk about that.
And part of the process too allows for that. It's not just stop and it leaves it there. We bring in another third party, the supervisor. Okay, explain why you think it's not safe. So it's almost like a safety timeout as well. So let's say there is a mistake. Either side can be, have the better information on what really happened, and without it going on for days. It may be an hour because we quickly bring in the supervisor to take a look at it too. So you've got a third party coming in and looking at it.
This is great because representing construction workers, I know that safety is imperative on the work. Labor management apprenticeship programs, that's ingrained into everybody. And empowers them too. So they don't feel there will be any retaliation or anything. If they do act out, they're empowered to do that and are able to carry through their task and also the responsibilities of making sure that everybody will be safe. So I'm really happy to see this kind of order coming through the department order because it just never,
Right. Sorry, John, did you want to finish up or?
That was actually the end of the presentation. Was if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any other questions from you before? Just one question. You have like confined spaces requirements or maybe family how we have it like an older or something like that?
So I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well up here, but you were asking if you had confined space programs?
Space order or something like that.
Yeah, can you talk about the vault entry and those types of things?
Yeah, for sure. So we do have a formal confined space program, and that would be, it's probably not visible on my table of contents, but that would be something that would go in our accident prevention manual here that goes through this is what you have to do. And in a nutshell, we need to make sure anybody entering a vault is properly trained. There are some air monitoring requirements, just to make sure that there's not it's not oxygen deficient or something before you go in. They have to establish venting and set barricades up so somebody doesn't fall down in the vault, and a whole host of other things that they need to do. But yeah, that's done very extensively, particularly by our electrical crew, but our water crews have to enter valve vaults and things as well. So it's a pretty common practice here.
And we also included engineers because every once in a while, an engineer who's working on a project, even if it's de-energized and they're going in just to take a look at a splice or something like that, there's still hazards, right? Because you're entering into that confined space. There could be gas, there could be all sorts of other things. So we've included them in the training process as well. So they have a responsibility to make sure whenever they enter, they follow those same protocols.
Right, so this is just a lot of stuff with administrative. I think like elimination of the hazards, then you go down to the level like engineering control, go down all the way to PPE. Yeah, that's what-
Yes, and as we get more and more undergrounded as a utility, it's going to be an additional issue. So we want to make sure everybody's trained on undergrounding.
Yeah, particularly on the avoidance, you mentioned the administrative first. Well, the first question we would ask of anybody is, well, do we even need to go into this hole in the first place? If not, let's just leave this alone and go about the job a different way.
Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the order.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Vice Chair Seymour, second. Second by Member Campos Kurtz, and we'll have a roll call.
This is a roll call vote for item number 8. Vice Chair Seymour. Board Member Abdulrahman. Board Member Baroldi.
Aye.
Board Member Gaona.
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz.
Aye.
Chair Madrona.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one was an electric system item, and an update there, so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peggy's gonna bring up a few pictures. First, I would like, do I have to-
I would like to highlight a pretty significant outage that we had last week on Thursday evening, March the 18th. The outage began at 5:30 p.m. And the cause was a metallic balloon that made contact with one of our high voltage lines on this power pole you'll see that was on Ball Road and just west of Knott Avenue. And AB is familiar with this one.
Exactly, thank you.
And let me just kind of take you through the sequence of events. Is that first, initially, it started with a blink of the entire circuit. And on that circuit are 1,700 customers. That was including AB. But it's hard to see, but our troubleshooters go out in the middle of the night to find where the problem is and patrol. And this is what they saw. They saw the blast on the pole, blast mark, and just below that are fuses that are open. Very difficult to see, but to a trained eye of a troubleshooter, it becomes quite obvious. So the protection devices work perfectly. So what happened was initially there was a blink on the circuit affecting 1,700 customers, but once those fuses, those are called branch line fuses, open up, it isolates to a number of customers and the damage to only 500 customers in this case. And so it was good to hear that our protective system is working as we expect it to. So the crews responded, they gathered the materials in the yard, and what they do is they gather all the materials they think they're gonna need before they even get to the outage, so that they can reduce the time back and forth to the yard. Because we're always trying to figure out ways to reduce our restoration time. And that is one of them. In this particular case, they didn't have the exact conductor to match. So our crew supervisor, Stan Santos, devised an alternative that would work for using a different type of conductor. And that also, again, avoided them having to go back to the yard to gather some more materials. So in this case, pretty significant outage. It was restored at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. It's interesting, maybe the next slide there. You can see it was the surrounding residential areas. We had to park our trucks in driveways at times. But what happens initially is our system operators also has a view of the entire system. And you all remember having a tour of that on the 8th floor here. The system operator also identified a location where they could restore even more customers of that 500. So they sent the crews to this location, which is far away from, well, relatively far away from where the actual blast on the pole and the damage occurred. And our crews then were able to redirect the power to 32 customers and pick those customers up literally an hour and a half earlier than the remainder of those 500 customers. So that's what we're doing initially is finding out how we can restore as many customers as quickly as possible. And that's what we do first, and then we tackle the repairs and the damages. That's what helps us improve our restoration times and get customers back in power. It's also interesting for us to convey to customers that when they're out of power and they don't see anybody around, they initially would think that we haven't responded, that we don't know about the outage and whatnot. But what we do try to convey to our customers is that our crews are out there. They're at other locations trying to get customers back up as much as possible before they actually get to the location they need to make the repairs. So you may hear sometimes a customer that would give us a complaint, they haven't seen a crew for 2 hours. It could be possibly because in this exact situation, that's what they're doing. So I just wanted to share that with the board. Again, it was a significant outage. I did text AB when we saw the initial blink, and most of those customers would think it was just the blink, but it actually resulted in a pretty significant outage.
Thank you, Janet. Really, you reported right away.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so very interesting outage. I hope that highlighted some of the things we do when they're out in the field. Great crew. Juga was out there too. You just have to be overseeing some of that. So it was that's where we got these great pictures from. Okay, then does anybody have any other questions on that before I move to the next highlight, Peggy, which is I wanted to share with the board our APU's ongoing program to improve street lighting throughout the city. The upgrades and replacement projects are prioritized based on safety reasons. And this has been identified by our public safety or our code enforcement folks, and we partner with community services to track and address the requests for additional street lighting. So about 5 years ago, there were about 400 requests that resulted in about $5 million backlog in requests for street lighting. And we developed what's called a match fund program, where we've leveraged federal funds and also neighborhood improvement funds. And we've worked down that list to 25 requests and a backlog of $1.5 million. So we've made significant progress over the last 5 years on improving street lighting throughout the city. These requests, Peggy, next slide, please. The requests come from every council district. And in some cases, there's safety concerns, as you see, on dark alleys. And the way we can respond to that is by putting up a lighting fixture on our existing power pole. So it's a nice, easy way to assess a way to get lighting and address concerns of our residents. We do safety walks with our residents and with the APD to identify areas for improvement. And like I said, it's a quick way to address some residents' safety concerns. Next slide. So here's some before and after shots. Some of these projects, we installed brand new lights where there were previously no lights at all in neighborhoods. And you can see the dramatic difference here in the lighting for this neighborhood here on Claudina and Valencia. And another before and after shot. One. There we go. Okay, and here's another location where the lighting was deficient. Today, we require new developments to provide street lighting. But there were many older parts of Anaheim prior to current development standards. And so that's why there are some neighborhoods that don't have any street lighting whatsoever. And that's why we prioritize street lighting on these customer requests through community services. Okay, last slide, Peggy. As we continue to address the replacements of lights to LEDs, we're looking at infrastructure in need of replacement, and our budget is transitioning to fixing some older street light poles that are deteriorating and adding some infill lights to address community needs. So that's a little bit about our street lighting program that we have here at Anaheim. If there's any questions, happy to answer.
Any questions? Or? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going to look at on water.
Sure. We have our water supply dashboard that's in your binder, and also up on the screen. And just a couple things I wanted to highlight
On the dashboard is the bottom middle. You can see our precipitation bar charts there. Everywhere you look, we're well below average here in Orange County, in Northern California, where we get our imported water, and the Colorado River Basin, where we get our imported water. We're all in dry conditions to very dry conditions. We're not through the rain and snow season yet, so we're still hopeful for a March miracle, but it looks like we are going to be dry in all three places this year. So that means we'll be pulling some water out of storage through our groundwater basin and through our metropolitan water district that we import water from. The other thing I want to point out to you in the upper right-hand corner is Lake Mead. Lake Mead levels have been dropping because it's dry conditions up there. As they drop, there are triggers on the level that people that take water out of Lake Mead, including California, must do certain cutbacks. So the first triggers, though, that it reaches are going to create a lot of cutbacks to Arizona and southern Nevada. And so there's going to be a lot of discussion now. There'll be a lot more in the newspaper about how this drought has really affected them. It does not yet affect us and won't affect us for a couple of years with the water we take off the Colorado River. But what will impact us is the dry conditions in Northern California, which is that middle graph up there, the upper middle one. That's also very low. Because there's low snowpack and low rainfall up there, the whole system is very dry. Metropolitan Water District, as you saw from the presentation that Craig gave, is where we're getting a lot of our water from right now. About 3/4 of our water is being imported. Typically, most of that comes from Northern California. And in a normal year or wet year, the Metropolitan will get 100% of what they're allocated to get. This year, at the beginning of the year, they thought it was going to be dry, so they allocated only 10% of what Metropolitan Water District would typically take, which is a big drop off. And for the first time since I've been here, they did something very unusual. They recalculated it just this week and dropped it from a 10% allocation of Met water down to 5%, which is almost nothing. So Metropolitan is not going to be getting hardly any, almost zero water from Northern California for the next year. And so they will be shifting off water out of storage that we have in Diamond Valley Lake, which is out by Hemet, and also the water that we can get out of Lake Mead. So new operations, our water quality is changing. We're working with our customers because they see the effects of this water quality change as we go from water from Northern California to our groundwater to Colorado River water. So we're working with our key client customers, such as water bottling facilities, medical facilities, to make sure they're aware this change is coming over the next week. You may or may not be able to tell a difference in the taste of the water, but some of these sensitive customers will. Any questions on our water supply and the water supply dashboard?
I'm really bored.
The other thing I want to update on was with the water quality a couple of years ago. You may remember we did lead testing at schools, and it was a regulation that state law that requires us to test every school for lead, and we did that. We completed that program. But with that, we realized we were talking to schools that there's a program that we could do to help the kids trust water and drink more water and trust the water and tap water. We offered a program to reimburse them for installing water bottle fill stations at schools. It was a limited program. We've done it for a couple of years, and it was really, really accepted, and the schools really liked it. We presented it here over a couple of years ago, some of the pictures of us doing it. But over the last couple of years, we kind of hit a milestone. We've installed 56 water bottle fill stations at 38 different schools here in Oklahoma. And there's more because some schools did some on their own, I guess from the high school and Canyon. But it was a big feat, and we continue to do it, and it's a really, really good program. And those are all my updates.
Thank you. Questions for the board? Now we'll go on to our report on finance and energy resources items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first thing before we move to the dashboard, I want to report to the board is yesterday morning, I received notice from Fitch rating agencies that they put the water utility on negative outlook. We're still AA+, but negative outlook. If you recall, a couple of months ago, they downgraded us from AAA to AA+. The negative outlook has nothing to do with our financial strength or our operations. It wholly is represented by the city's financial distress. Fitch has a methodology rule that any enterprise in a city can't be more than 3 notches above the city's rating. Since Fitch downgraded the city to A+, we are at 3 notches at AA+. But Fitch believes, I think, that the city's going to slide further, therefore it's going to pull us down further. So we are now negative outlook through no fault of our own. Since we are tied to the city, we are then beholden to Fitch's rating methodology. I'll continue to report to the board if the situation changes, but when it's negative outlook, they typically have 3 months to either downgrade us or take us off negative outlook. That's typically the process. So those are the 2 options they have in the next 90 days. So once that 90 days is up, I hope to report to the board that we're back to stable. But again, it's not up to us. There's nothing we can really do at this point to stave off a downgrade if the city's downgraded again.
That takes us to an A. That takes us to an A.
Yeah, if it moves to AA, from AA+ to AA, if the city moves to A. So we would just move in lockstep with the city.
Okay.
Just 3 notches up. So our people I talk to, they've never actually seen this methodology actually impact an organization before, where the utility is in such disparately strong financial shape as compared to the underlying city credit. It's very rare for this to happen because the city is so tied to transit occupancy tax. They're in a much deeper hole than we are. Up on the screen and in your binder is our finance dashboard. And as you can see, our revenue, we're 0.1% below budget. Which is, again, fabulous news. I reported last month that we were expecting a pretty robust February in terms of natural gas sales and wholesale sales because of the situation in Texas. And that is bearing out here in our February numbers. As you can see, our February revenue was above budget by about $1.5 million. And that's all a function of the natural gas sales we were able to sell to the market and wholesale sales, which I'll detail more in the energy dashboard. Again, costs came in below budget because the demand from our retail customers is low, so power supply costs are low, and our labor costs are low with the amount of vacancies we have, et cetera. So we're continuing to have budgetary savings there. So on the electric side, you can see that we are in pretty good shape. On the water side, we are about 5% below budget on sales. That is solely a function of retail customers not buying as much water. We don't have the same luxury in water that we have in electric, where we can sell this extra water we may have to other customers. So we're wholly dependent upon our retail customers to provide our revenue. So as they use less water, our revenue goes down, but our costs were about at budget for the month. So we do have a little bit of a net negative budget variance in water, about $700,000 right now. It is, it's something that we do need to pay attention to. Moving on to the power supply dashboard, we'll go into a little bit more detail here. If you look in the middle part of the screen with our wholesale revenue compared to budget, that line was our forecast or our budget for wholesale revenue, and we shot past that because, again, of the wholesale prices of power. When natural gas prices spiked, wholesale prices of energy spiked. They're typically correlated. And because they spiked, we were able to sell our extra power on the market at a higher price. Additionally, because one of our main natural gas plants was offline, we had extra natural gas to sell, and so we were able to sell it at a high margin. You can see down at the bottom, our portfolio has very little natural gas because that natural gas plant was offline for maintenance. We were mainly renewables and coal with a little bit of purchases. So our portfolio is doing just fine. Again, everything is back up and running, and we are in good shape. And with that, I'm ready to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you. Any members of the board have questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
I don't know how the stimulus fund will play with the department budget.
Yeah, so the stimulus funds, we will actually be able to receive some of it in the form of bill assistance potentially for our customers. I believe the way it works is as long as those customers need rental assistance. They can also apply some of that rental assistance to utility bill assistance if they're in arrears. We do not get any of the stimulus funds. However, the city is slated to receive $107 million from the COVID relief package that was just adopted by Congress and signed by the president. So they're going to get it in 2 tranches, half this fiscal year, half next fiscal year. Hopefully that stabilizes things. But the fear is even if we get into the yellow tier, the resort can only be at 35% capacity right now. So how many hotel rooms are going to be occupied at 35% capacity? And right now, the way I understand it, it's only California residents that can attend the parks. So how many hotel rooms are going to be occupied? It's even fewer because they'll be local, most likely. So I think from a city standpoint, there's still some choppy waters that they have to navigate through. From our standpoint, our retail revenue will still be relatively soft with dark hotel rooms, but with the park back up and running and at least some activity there, it's going to really help us out.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? See none? Thank you. Next item, we have an update on administrative and other service items.
Thank you very much. I just have a brief update this month. Put the dashboard up. The legislative session is in full swing with bills ranging from resource procurement mandates to wildfire and the expansion of the AQMD board, similar to the Supreme Court, to kind of help rebalance the political power on it. The legislative working group met just prior to this meeting to discuss the bills in more detail. And tonight I've highlighted 3 bills, 2 of which were mentioned last month, the offshore wind plan and the water service disconnection, which are still very concerning at this point. The new bill, AB 67, provides interim targets to California's goal to have 100% clean energy by 2045. Setting these interim targets signals the push to mandate resource requirements around the clock. The expectation is that this would increase costs due to the accelerated purchasing requirements. So this is a bill that we're looking at opposing in the future. Right now, we're still early in the legislative session, but there, if you'll look at the dashboard, there's already a number of bills that we are opposing, which is somewhat unusual. I think a lot of this is pent-up energy based on 2019, 2020, where not a lot of bills were introduced due to the pandemic, pardon me. And so I think this is going to be a very interesting and active legislative year that's going to be moving very quickly. This afternoon, the legislative working group did approve the guiding principles. Those are very valuable when we look at the new bills that come out. It allows us to move quickly, to look at these principles and help decide how do we take positions. So thank you again to the legislative working group for your time and effort on that committee. On the safety dashboard, the year-to-date is very similar to last year's, with the exception of the COVID-related illnesses. We're actually doing quite well. These metrics help us to monitor the program and to proactively react to it and to make changes as we need to. You may notice that the near misses at the bottom do not compare to what you saw with the safety services presentation just a few moments ago. And again, it's typically, for some reason, near misses at the beginning of the year. It just takes time for people to realize, okay, let's start reporting. So by the end of the year, right now we're at, I think, 1 for 2020 because of the calendar year to date. And if you recall from that presentation, there were 13. So again, as the year goes on, more near misses are reported, but we just see that year after year. It just takes time for people to kind of, I don't know if it's the holidays, I don't know what it is, but again, we do watch that very closely. It's a leading indicator. So, again, I think it's discussed already as stains and sprains are our most common injury. And then for this month, it was kind of the neck and shoulder. So with that, if there's any questions?
I have a question. My curiosity here. The bills that you support or oppose, how do you move that information forward?
You know what, we do it in 3 different ways. So what we try to do first is to work with our industry groups to try to get a coalition, to try to get others to agree with us that, oh yes, that bill is a problem. And then we'll have our industry groups work with us. We'll write letters. First, we'll reach out to the bill's author and try to talk to them about it, and see if they're at all interested in amending the bill, making changes, and if that's not the case, we work with the industry groups, then we'll write an opposition letter and we'll start to lobby it. But we found it to be very effective to kind of reach out to our friends, to build coalitions, to try to find others who are in the same boat. There's been times though where it's just been us, with just Anaheim on a particular issue, and we will reach out alone and reach out to the bill's author, do that same process. And typically when we've done that, I think once we write a letter opposition or support, others start to see the issue framed better and tend to join in with us. So that is kind of our approach to it.
Any other questions? Now we move on to item number 7.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few things. In your place settings, you should have something that looks like this. This is the email that we send to our business customers, and I highlight some of the programs that we have available for small and large customers. We have about 5,000 or so emails that we've collected over the number of years. And so we use this avenue to inform them of programs. So we just wanted to share that information with you. Plan for next month, we have a budget presentation. So what we do is in April, we introduce the budget and explain what the components are, but we do not ask for a vote in April. What we do is we give you a month. If you want to take a look at the documents, if you have questions, if you want to sit down with us individually, we'd be happy to accommodate that. But then May would be the actual recommendation that goes before City Council. So we want to give the board a full chance to review and ask questions. In addition to that, we have the posting of our water quality report. This is an annual report that we post on our website. And then we have an update to our wildfire mitigation plan. I have a few slides I wanted to share with the board, Peggy. The first one is to share that, in February of this year, we reopened our Anaheim West Tower, the first floor, where our customer service helped customers. And so we have 4 counter spaces there. And the one on in the foreground where you see our customer and our service representative, that's basically there's a plexiglass in between the customer and our representative. We have a computer there. We're able to help customers. There's a little slit underneath the plexiglass where they can slide documents together. The one to the left of that is actually dedicated for developers. And so before, what we had to do was if there was a developer who wanted to go through plans, and let's say they wanted to talk to electric group, water group, and then maybe talk about different rebates and things, they'd have to go to 3 different floors here and carry their sets of plans with them. Very inefficient. So we were contemplating how can we make it easier for developers, and then COVID happened. And so we said, we don't want people going up to the upper floors. So we actually dedicated that one counter space for developers. They could still come in, show us some plans, review those things, and we could have a discussion. But our folks have been very successful in doing almost all of it online. And they could either do a Zoom call or a phone call. They can email documents back and forth to each other. And so I'd say probably like 95%. Did you say that?
Yeah,
So about 95% of our interactions now with developers are all online. And so we don't have heavy usage of that. So it's dedicated and it's available if somebody really wants to go through the plans in person. But I think what we're finding with COVID is this is a good new enhancement for us to be able to do a lot of work. And we're going to continue that. Yes, right. And it helps them. They don't have to carry their plans through multiple floors. And so we no longer will need to allow for residents and developers to come up to the floors. We could take care of all this business down here. So I think that's one good thing that came out of COVID. Next slide. We have a new program that I wanted to share with the board. So there's an ad hoc committee, and that included Councilmember O'Neill and Councilmember Valencia. And they were looking at ways to help businesses, in particular small businesses who have been hit hard with the pandemic. Of course, there's a lot of programs for restaurants, but the question came up, what about all these other businesses? They might be medical offices, dental offices, insurance companies, all sorts of different businesses who might be struggling with COVID. And is there something that we can do to help them? So of course we had payment plans and deferred bills and no disconnects and all those things, but they asked for some type of financial assistance. And so we developed this program, which is equivalent to what we do for residents, where we have about $350 that we can make available for residents, and we have $1,000 bill credit that we allow for businesses who are struggling. And so this was something that we can do to help folks who are just on the cusp and they need to focus on reopening efforts, payroll issues, maybe they have lease payments or other things that they need to focus on, and the utility bill will not be the primary issue for them going forward. So this will be rolled out here. It just opened up. We're collecting applications through the middle of next month, and so far I think we have 80 or 90 applications already received. So far so good on that. Next,
Excuse me, did
yes.
funding come from the city or from us?
This one is from us. So this will be a non-retail electric revenue.
Right.
So we just use Brian's money that he saved. Okay.
Is that item was budgeted before?
I'm sorry?
This item of the budget was budgeted before? or just-
No, this is new. And so this was, yeah, it was a request through council that just came up. And so it was unbudgeted, but because we had wholesale revenues that we could dedicate for this purpose, that's the reason why we're doing it. Resiliency rebates. So there's been a lot of issues, of course, in California because of wildfires, and some customers are out of power for 3 or 4 days up in Northern California. It's not uncommon. And so there's a lot of attention. Of course, we've had our share of wildfires in the District 6 area in the east part of town. And so we've come up with a handful of rebates that help customers all throughout the city with being more resilient. And it could be things like an uninterruptible power supply so they don't lose their computer data. It could be things like a little portable generator, battery system that they could use for medical devices. So that's a new one that we just introduced. The outage that we just talked about, the one with the Mylar balloons, there was 2 residents in one of the apartment complexes there on Ball, and they were both on medical devices. And of course, they have battery backup for their immediate, but their concern was, how long is this outage going to last? Will I have my oxygen? So there are some concerns, very legitimate concerns. And so this program, if they're on our medical lifeline rate, they would be eligible for a $200 rebate to get these little portable systems like you see on the bottom left there. Another rebate program that we have is for energy storage. And as we're seeing more and more solar systems and things installed, last year we had those rotating outages. And so energy storage is something that you can use to back up your entire house if you want to. And so we're trying to make that available. And the way we're doing it is we're tying it to a time-based rate. So what we don't want is somebody to discharge and use that energy in the middle of the afternoon when we're having these issues. And then solar energy drops off, and now we've got a bigger issue. So what we're encouraging them is, if you apply for a time of use rate, it actually discourages use between 5 and 9, and it encourages use during the off hours. And so it'll actually help us as well. So that's a new rebate. And then the bottom right photo shows in those areas that are for residents who are concerned with wildfires and those embers getting up inside the eaves, there are fire-resistant vents and fire-resistant attic insulation. And so we have rebates to help with those. So again, trying to make sure that our residents and customers are as resilient as they can be. It's not just electric reliability, water reliability, it's also how can we help people help themselves. So that's what those rebates are. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess my question, how the rebate is going to full funded or 40% or 50% of the cost?
So what we try to do is we try to come in under where the market is. So it depends. On the battery systems, a brand new battery system for your entire house could cost $10,000. We don't provide a $10,000 rebate, but we have a $2,500 rebate because again, that helps us offload usage when we don't want it. The other ones, the portable ones, they're anywhere from $50 to $200, and it comes in probably anywhere from 50 to 75% of the cost of the device. And the last item I have is last year in 2020, we canceled our student scholarship for a number of reasons. One is because we like to try to do an internship or summer internship, and we weren't able to do that last year. So we'd like to reintroduce the scholarship program. And what we do is we offer a $5,000 scholarship for a student who's going to a 2 or 4 year accredited college and is able to go through some type of STEM related major. So it could be mathematics, it could be engineering, things like that. We will offer an optional summer internship. We're still trying to figure out how to do it this year, probably be mostly virtual with possible field trips and that type of thing. So that's what we're thinking of. And the other thing that we wanted to share this is in the past, we've had our board help select. So what we do is we'll gather all the applications and we'll shortlist 5, and then we'll take the 5 and bring it before an ad hoc committee of the board. And so, you know, if you're interested in participating, we're probably going to ask for those volunteers in April, and then in May, we'll actually conduct the interviews. And so in the past, what we had was our panel, and then a student would come in one at a time, and you'd have a chance to interact and ask them some questions. So we may have to do that virtually this year, but still, I think it's a good program. We want to support our high schoolers here, and so it's a way for us to be able to give back a little bit. So next month, I'll be asking for volunteers. So I just wanted to tee that up so you can kind of think about it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call. And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Questions, if not, we'll go on to items by board members. And Member Beraldi.
I have nothing this evening.
Thank you. Member Campos Curtis.
I just want to say thank you to Public Facilities for supporting the holiday lights contest in Anaheim. They just gave out their awards finally last Saturday. And people that won the LED awards were very excited and were sharing their successes with all the others. Some of whom spent about $1,000 a month with the regular lights. And then the ones with the LED lights said, oh, mine was $200 that month. So I expect a lot more going to LED, but thank you for continuing to support that.
Absolutely. Thank you
Much
so much.
appreciated.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Member Gavana.
Nothing today. Yes, I just wanna to thank Janet for keeping the public, the community is well informed about any incident or short circuits and stuff like that. That's really good thing. Thank you.
Dr. Seymour.
At some point in the future, I would appreciate knowing about what penetration our residences have in rooftop solar, what penetration of businesses we have in the city of Anaheim for their solar plants. What is the prognosis on electric cars today and what it looks like in the future?
We can do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And I have nothing to report, no items, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is a roll call vote for item number 15.
I think we need a motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion made by Vice Seymour. I'll second by Member Gavana.
This is a roll call vote for item number 15. Vice Chair Seymour.
Aye.
Board Member Abdul Rahman.
Aye.
Board Member Beraldi.
Aye.
Board Member Gavana.
Aye.
Board Member Campos Kurtz.
Aye.
Chair Madrona.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
See you on April 28th.
Okay, thank you.